Good evening, Vancouver. Welcome back. Canucks After Dark on a Friday. Emergency edition, solo edition. After what might be the biggest trade in Vancouver Canucks history in 55 years of existence. And the saddest I have been after a Canucks trade in my lifetime, I think. You know, we can look back and let me, this music is a vibe. Let's be real. Let's take it down a notch. Look, I've been a Canucks fan my entire life. I've seen my fair share of trades. You know, Bo Horvat being an obvious one. Eddie Lack, that was a big one, of course, to Carolina. JT Miller, within the last calendar year, JT Miller. And just looking back at really what 2025 has been for the Vancouver Canucks and looking at where this team was not 18 months ago, 19 months ago, 20 months ago, let's say, and what the feeling going into the season was 14 months ago, but also kind of 2 months ago, right? When we talked about how last season felt like a bit of a one-off, right? You know, we had all this JT Miller drama, Elias Pettersson, all this stuff. You know, Demko was hurt for a good chunk of the year, et cetera, et cetera. This feels like a year for a bounce back. We got rid of Rick Tocchet, who was a fine coach, but not a lot of offensive generation. And this is a year that they can start pushing back to what we know they can be. And boy, has that not happened. If you had told me 2 months ago when, I can even look, I can pull up YouTube Studio and we can take a look at the stream that Clay and I did. And I'm just going to scroll back a handful of weeks here. We did a stream on October 6th for the season preview, and we were fairly excited. You know, it was a brand new season. We felt fairly good about where the team was going, but or not necessarily fairly good about where the team was going, but we felt like last year was maybe an anomaly. But what more and more has revealed itself is that last year was not the anomaly the year prior was, right? That 2023-2024 season where this team went on that great run, had 109 points and took the Oilers to game 7 in round 2, and actually had a chance to be real Stanley Cup contenders without Brock Besser in that game 7, without Thatcher Demko. And we look back at that and saying, that team on paper had the potential, had some potential. And not a lot really, in theory, changed from that year to the next, except the rift between Miller and Pettersson, which completely derailed this team last year. And then coming into this year, well, they got rid of JT Miller. They brought in Philip Hedl. They went and they boosted their defense core. That was the weakest part of this team. And everything went off the rails. Our next episode, 1 week later, we called "This Canucks Start is Concerning." And then we had, 3 straight road wins. And then there was the Reichel trade when they lost 4 times in 8 games. And it just, they never got their footing this year. And there was all this, sort of noise in the background, right? Like, this team's not very good. And hey, Quinn Hughes is a UFA in a year and a half. Quinn Hughes is an unrestricted free agent in 1.5 years from now. Everyone watch out. And what we had been talking about over the last number of weeks when we were talking especially about Quinn Hughes was, but there's so much time, right? And oh my God, I just remembered. Frank Saravalli was wrong again. Who could have seen this coming? There's all this news about, Quinn might want out. There's all this talk about New Jersey and all these other teams getting into the mix. So it felt like, things might be rocky, but what we always talked about was, hey, you at the very least have until this deadline. And at this deadline, you can trade him to a contending team if you are absolutely sure he will not re-sign. You could trade him to a contending team. They would get this year and next year at his current cap hit in the 7s. And that team that would be making that trade, there'd be so much value that teams would be lining up and throwing first-round picks and throwing prospects in there that while it will suck to lose Quinn Hughes, if he doesn't want to be there, at least you will get some good value for him. Now, I'm not saying that what they got was not good value, and we'll get to that. We're not going to talk about the return yet. We're not there yet. But we had time. Clay and I did a show not 4 days ago, And there was at no point, I put Quinn Hughes in the thumbnail because he looked really sad, like most of the pictures of him do. But at no point in that were we like, could this be the last time we do a show before Quinn Hughes gets traded? That was never in the cards. That never felt like it was in the cards. There was all this talk, this trade talk going around, and we know that this management group, Jim Rutherford especially, loves to be the first to make a move, right? He loves to get ahead of the market. But when I thought Jim Rutherford loves to get ahead of the market, I'm thinking Kiefer Sherwood. I'm thinking the second, third, fourth line guy on a cheap contract who has massively overachieved his contract, and the Canucks are going to get good value for him. That was the piece I thought that was going to get moved that quickly. So when I am on my way to my work Christmas party, and it's 4:30, and I'm driving on my way to this party, and my phone just starts blowing up with 4 different group chats I'm in that all are very hockey focused. And my heart just sank, right? Like, I think that's the only reaction I could have, because, it's just getting poured into my phone that my favorite player, I think that I have ever watched, especially in a Canucks uniform, but I think my favorite player I've ever watched is now not part of the team I cheer for. And that sucks. We can leave behind all the, did he want to stay? Did he want to go? What's the return? What does the future of the team look like? Just from a perspective of the guy I love to watch on the ice. Do I care about his press conferences and the stuff in the locker room? And sure, he's fine spoken and he's the captain, et cetera, et cetera. Do I care about that? Not really. And I'm not, Clay goes and he watches a lot of the press conferences and loops me on a lot of those things when we do our show, but I'm not super in tune with like the press conferences, things like that, because it's not what I'm here for, right? In the playoffs, I'll be really into that, which this team could be years from now. But that's not what I'm here for. I am here for the talent and the game. The game is the big thing. I love hockey. I've grown up with hockey. I've played it all my life. It's my favorite thing in the world. And whenever I watch Quinn Hughes play hockey, I just can't help but smile. I can't help but laugh when he would spin off defenders and they'd go sliding into the boards, right? Like he is one of the most talented players we've ever seen. He is by far the best defenseman in Canucks history. And after, we got him in that draft where, Arizona picked Barrett Hayton, and then the Red Wings took Zadina, and we ended up with Hughes. And we look at that, and I'm thinking, this guy is ours for the next 15 years. And I looked at it, before there was all the talk of him getting traded, but you look at a player of his caliber, 26 years old, and you're thinking, man, that guy's got another good 10 to 12 years at least in this league. And he can do that here. He already is the best defenseman in franchise history, but he could be one of the greatest defensemen of all time. And he could do that in a Canucks jersey. And that is not what's going to happen. He is off to Minnesota, where he's going to be an absolute hero there for a team that is doing surprisingly well. And that just sucks. Just sucks. Now, I get the claim to fame of being in the building the last time Quinn Hughes won a game in a Vancouver Canucks jersey, and I will take that with me. But yeah, my by far favorite player to watch ever is gone, and it sucks. Was he having the best year? No. But I really was hoping that all of this chatter about all these trade destinations, things like that, I was really hoping we would just get to July 1st and we would say, hey, we've got the leverage to give you the 8-year contract instead of the 6. We can give you 17. We'll give you a check with 6 zeros on it. Put whatever damn number in front of that you want. We don't get that anymore. Now, there is the curveball. If you will allow me to cope for a second, he goes to Minnesota. He tanks really hard. So that first round pick we got for Quinn Hughes becomes first overall. And then when that contract expires, he comes back as UFA. Obviously, that's not going to happen. On the bright side, he's not going to New Jersey, but he's in our conference. Either way, that's just where I wanted to start. It's in the thumbnail. big, bold letters, sadness. And that's just kind of where I am. For those of you sort of joining after I started, just me tonight. Clay's busy. He is out. I wasn't necessarily planning on doing this, but I got home and I was at a work party where no one was a hockey fan. So I didn't have anyone to really talk to, right? Again, I got the group chats going and I can see reactions of people being upset. That doesn't do anything. So this is my place to just talk. And I see comments coming through and I appreciate those. And I will go and I'll probably go to you guys in a bit just to get your thoughts. Don't know how long I'll be here. I do have a nice beer. It looks like a much different color on the screen for some reason than it does in real life. It looks like it's more yellow and hazy, but we're going to settle in on this Friday night. We'll talk about Quinn Hughes. We'll talk about the return. 459 games in a Canucks jersey, plus the 30 in the playoffs. 432 points, most in Canucks franchise history. At least he got that record before he left. Obviously, he'll be far surpassed by Zeev Buium. Yeah. Anyway, let's get to, we've talked about Quinn a little bit. I mean, this team is an absolute disaster, right? I sort of mentioned off the top, in the last calendar year, having the JT Miller-Pettersson saga. And, this management group wanted Rick Tocchet, right? Like, we know that. We know that this management group went to Rick Tocchet and they said, hey, here's a real big chunk of money. Stay here in Vancouver. And Rick Tocchet said, nah, gonna go do my own thing in Philly. After, the whole JT Miller saga debacle. And then we get to this with Quinn Hughes leaving. It just feels like this team it's either rotten or it's cursed, and I don't know which is better as an alternative or as an option, but neither of them seem very good. Obviously a team that has never won the Stanley Cup. One day they might, we'll see. And has never really fully committed to the rebuild, right? Through the whole Jim Benning years, we knew a rebuild was the play, and we had been talking about it so much and so often. And you can still go back to my video on the Parker's Pucks YouTube channel about when that Oliver Ekman-Larsson trade happened. Within minutes, I was upset about it and ranting about it on my own channel. I have the receipts. They're still there. But obviously that was the beginning of the end, obviously after the Roussel and Beal contracts, whatever. But this team has never really committed to a rebuild, and there's maybe a little bit of solace in the fact that they might be doing that now. Jim Rutherford used the word rebuild, and I said on this show on Monday, do I trust an 80-year-old Jim Rutherford to lead a rebuild? Maybe not. Maybe, and again, nothing against the guy, and is it problematic to say that, I think maybe someone who is 79 or 80 years old might have poor incentives when it comes to rebuilding a team, right? Maybe a 4 to 6 year outlook isn't a great spot to be for management group. But I do say that in a league where very few general managers make it that long anyways, and maybe it doesn't matter, right? Why would any team have an incentive to rebuild if general managers have a short shelf life? But really, this team it's a soap opera more than a hockey team at this point. And I think we really got fooled and deluded by their one seemingly very lucky run of play in the 2023-24 season, where they had those 109 points and again took the Oilers to the end of the second round. And it felt like that was the start of something new. And looking at this management group, I was like, wow, you did a great job turning this team from a bottom of the barrel hockey club, not really having any high draft picks, for at least that management group in a way to build this team out. But they went out, got a lot of good cheap free agents, made some savvy moves, and built a 109-point hockey team. But that feels more and more every day like it was a fluke more than anything. So with Quinn Hughes gone, and apparently I think Drager said, it's been known for some time in the Canucks organization that Hughes would not be re-signing. And obviously Clay and I had talked about this fairly much at length, right? Like, we knew that Canucks management knew what was going to happen at that time. The Canucks management obviously knew whether or not Hughes was thinking about staying or not. We were in the dark, and we were hopeful that he'd be willing to stay. Frank Saravalli did come out 2 weeks ago, I think it was, and say, all my sources say Quinn Hughes is committed to Vancouver, yada, yada, yada. And I jokingly said, I was only half joking, on Canucks After Dark, well, goodbye, Quinn Hughes. Turns out we were right. So yeah, this team feels like a mess. I don't really know where it goes from here. They have found their way into last place in the NHL, which obviously we're well aware of. 25 points in 31 games, half of the points of the Colorado Avalanche, who have 51 in 31 games, minus 24 goal differential, second worst in hockey. And I remember all the metrics we talked about a couple weeks ago. They were dead last, and I'm sure that's still the case in expected goals percentage, dead last in shot differential, like just dead last in all these different metrics that really showed, hey, this isn't just a bad run of play or unlucky and goalies are making stops, even though that's kind of been the last couple weeks for the Canucks and before they were lucky and still losing. But nevertheless, this team just isn't very good. And you can see why, right? On paper, you look at it, you look at the goaltending. We'll go bottom up, right? Goaltending. Great starter, Thatcher Demko. He hasn't been healthy for the last 2.5 years. Kevin Lankinen, good 1B goalie, but now he's having to be a 1A, and he's not able to carry that workload. Okay, so goaltending hasn't been working too well. Well, let's look at the defense. Defense is pretty good, right? Hughes, Hronik, you got Verlander coming up. You've got Elias Pettersson. You've got, some guys down in the wing, or, sort of waiting in the wings to come up. Like, the defense is fine. Tyler Myers is still okay as a hockey player. But then you get up to the forwards, and especially down the middle, and that was the big hole, right? You got Elias Pettersson, who is now hurt, and no one else. Right? You had Philip Hedl being hurt the entire year, essentially, and who knows if he'll ever come back, because I don't think he should. And you look at last night's game against Buffalo, and your number one center was Linus Karlsson. Or maybe it was Max Sassone. Doesn't matter. So at least that problem is somewhat solved now with the trade. But you can see why, and we had said coming into the year, like, hey, if this team is bad, it's because the center depth is not working, and that's where we are. And the center depth hasn't been working. So, where does this team go from here? Well, they are worse. They are worse today than they were yesterday. And yesterday, they were 32nd in the NHL. So this trajectory they're on to be the worst team in hockey, they could very well keep it up. And thank you, Major General Tao, for gifting the membership. Really appreciate it. Thank you for joining in here. And like they are worse today than they are now. So if this team is truly ready to tank, boy, are we ready to tank. Because you have to think there's more moves coming. You have to think guys like Kiefer Sherwood are getting moved. But what it really brings me to, and again, we'll get to the return. I think the return is the last thing we're going to talk about, because it's really going to talk about the rest of this season and the seasons to come. And wow, Major General Tao, 20 Canucks After Dark memberships. Really appreciate it. That's very, very kind of you. A ninth of you that are in here are going to get a membership for Major General Tao. Make sure you say thank you if you are one of them. That's fantastic. Thank you. This really raises a lot of questions about the last few months in the Canucks, because I imagine that this knowledge of Quinn Hughes not wanting to stick around is not new knowledge. I cannot imagine for the life of me that this came up in the last month or the last 3 weeks or even the last 2 months. This must have been something the Canucks were aware of for some time. And I imagine, and I heard talk of this when I was driving home, that Rick Tocchet was also aware of it. And like we said, this management group went to Rick Tocchet with a pile of money and said, stay here and coach this team. But maybe he had a whisper in his ear that Quinn Hughes wasn't going to be coming back. And he said, you know what? I'm going to get out while I have a bit of reputation. I can get another job in Philadelphia and work with some young guys there and try to build a decent hockey team. By the way, they're 12th in the NHL in points and I think in a playoff spot as we speak right now. Yeah, they're in that first wild card in the East. So good for Rick. So that raises some other questions. 3 of them in particular. Number 1, Brock Besser. Number 2, Connor Garland. And number 3, Thatcher Demko. The 3 Americans that we thought, hey, if the Canucks are going out and saying, hey, Brock, here's a bunch of money, stay here. Hey, Connor Garland, 6x6, stick around. Thatcher Demko, we know you're hurt. That's fine. 3 more years. We're building a contender here. But if they knew this whole time that Quinn Hughes had a foot out the door, and they knew this whole time that they were going to be the ones that had to move Quinn Hughes, do any of those moves make that much sense? Like, I'm just not sure I necessarily get it. Because Brock Besser, let's take a quick look. Wow, cannot type today. Brock Besser is 28 years old. He is now under contract until he is 2032. So how old will he be in 2032? He'll be 35. So he's under contract basically the rest of his high-level career. Connor Garland is 29. 6 more years, so till he's 35 as well. Maybe 36 because it doesn't kick until next year. So they have locked up this sort of new core of Besser and Garland for a number of years, and then Thatcher Demko as well, right? That Thatcher Demko contract, 3 years at what was it, $8.5 million, really felt like a contender contract. It was a, hey, we're making this push now. We need our number 1 goalie. That needs to be you. Even though you've had some health struggles, even though we know you're probably only going to play 40, 45 games this year, we need to keep you locked in because we want to push for the cup this year. And who knows, maybe that was management's thought coming into this season. Hey, we're going to get 1 last, maybe 2 last kicks at the can with Quinn Hughes before he wants to leave. Because if this team was good, if this Canucks team was where, let's take a look at the standings. If this Canucks team was where the Minnesota Wild are today, they don't trade Quinn Hughes. And maybe Quinn Hughes still wants out. And maybe long-term for his career says, I'm not going to sign here as a UFA. They sure as hell don't trade him. Because as a cup contender, Quinn Hughes is one of the best assets you could have, right? A true number 1 defenseman. Most teams that win the Stanley Cup have one of those. So really, do I blame Quinn Hughes here? No. I've said it week after week on Canucks After Dark. If I was in Quinn Hughes' spot, I would probably want out too. If I hadn't been a Canucks fan since as long as I can remember, I would want out too. There's a reason I spend more time, at least lately, thinking about Seattle sports teams than I do about my own hometown hockey team, because those teams have built teams that can actually contend, right? Like I'm a big Seattle Seahawks fan. As long as I've been a Seahawks fan, which goes back to 2009, probably 2008, somewhere in there. They have been good at the very least, right? Because they have a competent management group and they've had the same one for a long time. Seattle Mariners have been bad forever, but they've been good since I've started watching baseball. So I like cheering for them. But this Canucks team, it feels like every time they pull me in, they find a new way to hurt me. And that's what happened today. That's what happened 14 years ago. That's what happened when the Oliver Ekman-Larsson trade happened. They always find a new way to hurt me. And so if I look at, again, Quinn Hughes, I say I don't blame him, right? And I heard Jason Bruff say this because they did an emergency episode. And I was only in the car when they were live for like 5 minutes, but I heard this part where he basically said, I at least wish this team had been good enough so that we could have said, screw you for leaving, Quinn, when he became a UFA and pushed his way out the door. But we don't get that opportunity because he had every right to push his way out the door. The team had Quinn Hughes. He is in his 8th season in the NHL. A three-time Norris finalist, I want to say, and a one-time Norris winner. And he played 30 playoff games. And one of those years, there was an extra round in the playoffs because he played those 4 games against Minnesota in 2020. So, all in all, it's an organizational failure to allow someone of Quinn Hughes' caliber to leave. And that sucks. It really, really sucks. All right. I'm going to take a sip, and then we're going to talk about return. All right. So this trade happened again. I was on the road. So I'm like panicking on the little dial in my car, trying to change it from the podcast I was listening to the radio so I could hear what was going on. And that's where we're going to get to. Let's talk about return. And I've got a few articles here that we're going to look at as well. The trade is for Marco Rossi, who we apparently wanted for some time to be our number 2 center. Well, we got our guy. It just took the best player we've ever had. Marco Rossi, Zeev Boyum, Liam Ogren, and a first-round pick. Now, before we talk about any of those players, the Canucks lose this trade. Flat out. And that is just the way trades in hockey work. If you give up the best player in a trade, you usually lose it. So let's talk about those players. And we're going to go from oldest to youngest. Starting with Marco Rossi. Marco Rossi, I really like. I genuinely like this player. He is a true number 2 center. This team finally has a number 2 center to stand behind Elias Pettersson. And if you are trying to build a forward core, and God, I hope they don't try to build something in free agency for next year. Marco Rossi is a decent piece. He's small, 5'9", 192. I mean, he's bulky. He's got 20 pounds on me, and he's small. He's under contract for this year and 2 more at $5 million, and he's an RFA. So the Canucks own his rights, although who knows if that means anything. 13 points this year in 17 games. He's a pretty fine hockey player, right? Last year he had 60 points in 82 games. The year before, he came back from that long COVID issue. He added 40 points, but he's a 20 goal scorer, 40 to 60 point guy in his 2 years. He's on pace this year for around 60 as well. Like he's genuinely a pretty good hockey player, and he's young, right? He's 24, so he's not super young, right? He's only 2 years younger than Quinn Hughes, and defense usually take longer to develop than center, but he's fine. He's a good player, good number 2 center in. But again, if we start looking at windows, right? And we had said for a while, okay, this team's window is like 2 years or so when they have Demko and when they have Hughes for cheap. That was the big thing, right? Having Hughes under a cheap contract when you have Pettersson under 11.6. But he's 24 already. So if this team's going to compete in 3 or 4 years, is he still your 2C then? Who knows what this team looks like by then. Other pieces, Liam Ogren. Canucks were rumored to draft this guy, right? Remember, was it 2022 when Liam Ogren was like the name around the Vancouver Canucks in that draft? And we ended up picking Lek Aramaki instead, who has been fine. He's played 32 games. Ogren has played 46. They're sort of in the same boat. Ogren, I think, less of a goal scorer, more of a little bit more of a playmaker, I think is the idea. Only one problem, just one small problem for Ogren. I mean, he's only 21. Keep that in mind. But he has played 18 games this year doesn't have a point. That's not great. Expected goals for percentage 30% this year. So while he's on the ice, they are projected to score 30% of the goals. Not very good. But, you know, I think he projects to be an okay player, a winger, maybe second line if things go well. Currently he's playing fourth line, but like, it's not great, right? Like he's a fine piece. Hopefully he can get some stuff going. You know, hopefully he can at least be like a Höglander, maybe a little bit better. But my favorite piece in this trade, and the one I'm looking forward to the most, again, he's not Quinn Hughes, although who knows, maybe he turns into one, is Zeev Boyum. I really like this player. Like I really like this player. He is a full-time NHLer. Made it into the NHL this year, and he's a full-time NHLer at the age of 20 as a defenseman. That is impressive, right? You might know Quinn Hughes did something similar. I think he was actually 18 when he broke. Actually, he was about 20 when he broke into the NHL as well. So maybe he's the next Quinn Hughes. Again, high hopes. 14 points in 31 games this year, so he's been doing quite well in that regard. Again, it's hard to judge 20-year-old defensemen who have played 30 games in the NHL, right? Like, you look at like Tom Willander or Villander, like, can't speak. He is also 20 and breaking into the NHL, right? They're the same age. He's played, 21 games. Boyum's played 31, right? Like, you can sort of look at this as like maybe your future top pair, and that future might be pretty soon, of having Boyum and Villander as your top pair, a couple 20-year-olds in 3 or 4 years from now. In 5 or 6 years from now, if this team's trying to contend, that could very well be your top pair, and it could be a really good top pair if both of them pan out. And that is the hard part with trading away the second best defenseman in the NHL. Actually, we don't have Quinn Hughes anymore. We can throw him under the bus. Adam Fox is better. No, of course not. But yeah, like you look at what this team could project to be if everyone hits their peak, and it could end up being pretty decent down the line, right? A Boyum Villander first pair, again, could be fantastic. It would be small. They're both 6 feet tall, basically, but it could be very good. But again, everyone has to hit, right? Remember Dane Fox? Remember Cole Castles? Those guys. Like Cole Castles was supposed to be the McDavid killer, never really made it. So as long as things like if Marco Rossi becomes an elite number 2 center, probably won't be, but should be a solid 2C, and Zeev Boyum can become a number 1 defenseman, then they can at least have the pieces to begin that rebuild. And Ogren could be a nice piece as well. And then, of course, the other piece of this puzzle is that 2026 first. That is unprotected. Now, the Wild are 4 points. Let's look at the Oilers down there. They've got a 5-point lead on a playoff spot, maybe 6-point lead. But who knows, right? Minnesota, I look at the Minnesota Wild as a perennial 18th place team. That's just sort of where I have them in my mind. They've been pretty good to start this year. If by some miracle Minnesota were to fall off a cliff, that pick is unprotected. So this team very well could have 2 decent picks. Now, the Canucks pick, again, they got a lot worse today, right? Marco Rossi is going to be your number 1 center as soon as possible. Liam Ogren is going to be probably playing next to him, if I had to imagine. And Zeev Boyum is probably going to be playing, first or second pair minutes. He's probably going to be playing 20 minutes a night. But this team is going to be worse than when Quinn Hughes was playing 28 minutes a night for them by a decent bit. So if where this team has been is their true caliber, and based on all the analytics, that is where they're at, and there's only 51 games left in the season, we're almost halfway through the season, then they will be a bottom 5 team in the NHL, and they will have a very good draft pick. And if Minnesota can somehow fall off a cliff, maybe they'll have 2 really good draft picks. But looking forward, I got to imagine everybody, and I mean everybody, is available, right? Like if Quinn Hughes has been traded, who are your untouchables? Well, Elias Pettersson, because you're not going to get the value for his contract that he might be worth here. And he is now your face of the franchise. If you can find a way to, do you trade Connor Garland before that 6x6 kicks in this offseason? You might have to, because I believe, and let me verify this really quick, he has a full no move clause for the entirety of that contract. Or sorry, for the first 3 years of that contract. Then it goes to a modified no trade. But essentially, he becomes untradeable. I think it's got to be an option on the table, right? Kiefer Sherwood, that's a gimme. Pending UFA, he's lining up for his big payday as an NHL player. You know, he's fallen off a little bit lately over the last couple of weeks. You know, but maybe you can get an okay pick for him. I look at Evander Kane. You know, got to trade him if you can get anything for him. You know, I look at guys like Drew O'Connor, who has a modified no trade as well, but like he's not really in the future of this team, right? Like so many of these guys that if you truly are going to rebuild, the guys who are 28 and above probably aren't going to be on this team when you're a contender, right? Like Marcus Pettersson. That trade doesn't look too hot anymore. That contract doesn't, not that it, you know, I think the trade was okay. The contract doesn't look great now though. Although $5.5 million, it's not brutal, but you're locked in on a no move for the first 3 years. You know, who knows if they can move Marcus Pettersson, right? Tyler Myers, I don't think will go anywhere, and that's fine. You know, you have Phil Hronik for 6 more years after this one. Thatcher Demko, that 3-year extension, like we're pivoting hard to a rebuild. And yeah, they haven't been setting up for it. I do like this from Falal. Everyone Minnesota sports teams trade away become superstars. Sam Darnold moment. They didn't trade him, but he has been very good, except for against the Rams, which is scary. Yeah. That's just kind of where I am. I've gone through the return. I've gone through Quinn Hughes. Jackknife asked if I read the chat. I told you I was going to read the chat at the end, but that's okay. Yeah, for the 300 of you in here, which is the most we've had in here in a while, and I'm sorry, Clay, that you're not here for this. By the way, I'll just say as a side piece, feel free to subscribe if you're here and you want to, you know, we're here every Monday, although who knows if that's going to last, if this team is, you know, 32nd in the league for the next 4 months of the season. I might check out. But yeah, overall, I'll sort of circle back to where I started, because I started being kind of sad and upset, and then I've spent the last 30 minutes talking more through things, more analytically, and more just about like the pieces involved. Going back to where I started, I'm sad, man. I am sad. Yeah. Peter asks, when do you think things started to fall apart for this court? I'm going to start, just throw questions in the chat. We're going to chill here for the next 15 minutes, then we'll wrap up. When do things start to fall apart for this core? Were they ever really together? You know, there's been issues the entire time. Obviously things came together. The JT Miller thing was the big one though, right? That's what really kickstarted it. Yeah, man, it's tough. Bruce asks, what about trading Demko? It's really tough because I don't think you're going to get I don't think you're really going to get anything for Demko. It's tough because if I'm managing it like I would manage like an NHL, like an EA NHL franchise, so yeah, just trade Demko, get a first. Trade this guy, get a first. Trade that guy, get a second. Just trade everybody. Grab a bunch of free agents that are like 33 years old and 78 overall. Be the worst team in hockey for 3 years. Use all those picks. You're the best team of all time. Not how it really works in the NHL. Although if it did, I'd be a great GM. Trading Demko, like, it makes your team worse, which is what you want right now. But I just don't know I don't know how tradable he is with that contract coming up, because he just hasn't been healthy Toy Maker Props says, not a rebuild if you're stuck with Hronik, Myers, EP40. Look, I get it when you're talking about Pettersson, although Pettersson is still young enough to not be crazy for a rebuild, and to be like the veteran guy through your rebuild. Hronik is tough. Myers, I wouldn't worry about Myers. He's just a veteran guy that's old and is going to be on this team for 2 more years. That's not really an issue with the rebuild. Every rebuilding team has guys like that. But I definitely see your point with Hronik. Michael Chow says, if they really want to wipe the slate clean, you need to unload Demko. Yeah, I think we're kind of on the same page, but it's tough to do. I mean, you have Lankinen for 4 more years after this. You might as well get rid of Demko. Canucks fan 9420 says they started falling apart when they chose Miller over Horvat. Yeah, this is a tricky one for me, because if they didn't know about what was going to happen between Miller and Pettersson, I mean, Miller was the better player. So I see why you would go the Miller route. And Horvat didn't do great when he got traded, although he's been very good this year. And I'm happy for him. I've got no bad blood towards Horvat. But yeah, you got to think about how things might be different. You know, if they went Horvat instead of Miller, maybe they don't have that 109-point run. Maybe they're a 97-point team that sneaks into the playoffs and they stay humble and they, work to become a true contender. So yeah, we can play what if all day, but it's tough. Tristan Palo 80. I appreciate this perspective. Wild fan here. Boyum is really interesting, but defense needs time, and that's very fair. I think you said intriguing, not interesting, but it's very fair. I don't worry about that too much for a 20-year-old, right? Like, again, Quinn Hughes is a tough comparison for anybody. But when Quinn Hughes broke into the league, he wasn't as solid defensively as he is now. So I think it's just one of those things that you develop over time, especially getting used to NHL speed. But not everyone can make that jump. So it's a very fair statement. Rossi's a solid 2 if he has help around him. He struggled without Kaprizov, 97. Hate to tell you, I guess you don't care. You're a Wild fan. He's not going to get a ton of help here. Ogren can't keep his ice time. We give him the chance. And I think that's been pretty clear. And maybe Ogren is a classic, fresh slate, fresh opportunity going to a new team. And maybe that works. Although we saw how that went with Lucas Reichel. But thank you, Tristan, for chiming in. Tom says playoffs twice, so it's crazy. Yeah. If you have the second best defenseman in hockey, especially 3 years on an ELC, another 5 years on a really cheap contract for what his value was, and you couldn't capitalize on that, right? You look at I feel like the NFL is a really good example of this, because teams that are really bad, and it's usually because they don't have a quarterback, right? And that's what Quinn Hughes is to this team. He's the quarterback. When they finally draft a rookie quarterback and he's actually good, right? Like right off the bat, right? We're not talking rookie Daniel Jones. We're talking, we're talking about quarterbacks who are actually fantastic the moment they join. Right? Like Russell Wilson's a decent example for the Seahawks, thinking about my local team or the team that I cheer for. But obviously there's a bunch of examples about this around the league. But when NFL quarterbacks, when you get a good one on a rookie contract, and you are saving so much money over the value you are getting from that quarterback, those teams usually end up being pretty good in year 2 when they realize, hey, this quarterback is actually a stud and he's playing $50 million better than we're paying him. Let's go spend a ton of money on an offensive line and some defense and see if we can contend. And suddenly that's an 11-win team. The Canucks failed to do that. And that's what sucks. Because if you really think about it, it's not just Hughes. It's also Elias Pettersson on a cheap contract when he was playing really well. You had Thatcher Demko at $5 million a year. You had Brock Besser. You had JT. You had a murderer's row down the middle of Pettersson, Miller, and Horvat. This team on paper and with cap hits should have been able to put the pieces together to be a true contender, or at least be in the mix, and they blew it. And part of that's this management group. A lot of it is the management group before them. But yeah, when like, and I say this all the time, when we talk about a salary cap league, and in the current salary cap, and this might change in the next couple of years, but we talk about a current salary cap where most teams can spend to the salary cap. The best team in hockey will be the team that is the most efficient with the salary cap. Everyone gets the same amount of money. Whoever can build the best team, whoever can get the most value for their dollar is the best team in hockey. That's just the way she works because every team has that same amount of money. Some teams have smaller budgets, but you get the idea. This team hasn't been that good. All right. What else do we got? Phil says it's cup or bust right now for the Wild. They're going to have problems in a couple of years. It's so weird hearing the Wild being cup or bust. And they're going to have problems in a couple of years, but like they just got out of the Suter and Parise contracts. I think they're out of them. But yeah, I can see why they're making that move, and it's a move for a year and a half. And if they can extend them, then that's huge for them. Clip Justice says, don't you think they got a good return? I think they got a fine return. Like genuinely, I think they got a defenseman who could be a first pair guy, and they got a center who should be a 2C if everything works out, and a first round pick, and Liam Ogren. But we're talking about the second best defenseman in the NHL. We're talking about like a top 6 hockey player in the world. It hurts. The Canucks have never had a defenseman anywhere close. He's a 26-year-old, and he holds the franchise record in points by a mile. So, yeah. Daniel4965 says it's not the core, it's the owner. Usually that's where things rot from, is from the top. Keep It Linear says, who won the Bo Horvat trade? I don't know. It's kind of a wash. I don't think it really matters at this point. I don't think either team is contending either way. All right. Shmi asked what I'm drinking. It's just it's a Saune Hefeweizen from Twin Sales, but no free ads. Tom Dang says, why would they rebuild now when they didn't rebuild when he was a rookie? Well, it's a different management group for one. Same owner, and we all wanted them to rebuild around then, but different management group, I would say. And maybe they're kind of realizing at the point where they don't have a choice at all. JC Van Dam says, could Sherwood grab a first in a trade? It's tough because in the first month of the season, he was playing like a guy who was worth a first round pick. However, he hasn't been that good since. And I don't blame the Canucks for not trading him in October or early November because it was so early in the season that like you wouldn't be moving guys in that situation. But he's fallen off a little bit. So we'll see. I don't think they should really rush to trade him. I think you give it another, you can run it till the deadline and hope he goes on a little run and trade him then. What else we got? Do we go into darkness retreat, says Peter? Maybe. Just scroll in. Gerald says next on the block, Sherwood and Kane. Yeah, easy. Those are the two gimmies. Again, I don't know if you try to move Garland before that contract kicks in, but I wouldn't see why you wouldn't think about it at the very least. Does Rossi hinder Ratu development? No. Have you seen the center depth on this team? Ratu is still the number 2 center tomorrow. Maybe number 3, and I think that's fine. I don't think Ratu should be playing second line minutes yet, even though we sort of joked about at the start of the season that he could be a 2C. He's not yet. He should be playing third line minutes and just getting ice time and getting practice. That's fine. Yeah, there's a lot of captains getting traded that people are talking about in the chat. RMD asked if I can explain this trade in NBA terms. I don't watch basketball, so no. Quinn Hughes, basketball players. Okay, who's the second best defensive basketball player in the? I don't know. Kawhi? Is he still good? I don't know. I'm not a basketball guy. I've been to one basketball game and I left at halftime in a tie game. If that tells you anything. Just scroll in. Poker Night 43. I hope that 43 is not about Quinn Hughes, man. In your name. Wild have 48 million cap space when he's a free agent. They have the space. Yeah, Canucks could have the space too, man. I don't think it's the money. That's the problem. I think it's where he wants to play. And I think he wants to win. And I don't blame him. I would want to win too. I want this team to win, man. Samu asks, who's the new C? They're not going to name another center, man. I don't think... Can you ever name another center? Has there been a center since Henrik Sedin that hasn't been cursed? I think it's only been a couple. But hasn't been great. No, but for this year, it won't be anyone. For next year, if Pettersson somehow gets 95 points this year, it's him. I doubt that's going to happen. It might be David Kampf. No, I mean, it might be Brock Besser for all we know. We'll see. Or I don't necessarily think you have a guy that you have to give it to today. Keep it linear asks if I wish they drafted Axel Sandin Pellikka instead of Tom Verlander. I'm not up to date on Axel Sandin Pellikka and what he's up to in Detroit, but he's been good. It looks like. Yeah, he's played 32 games. I mean, is that much different from Tom Verlander? I don't necessarily think so. I wanted Zach Benson. I'll tell you that. And wow, would I have been right? But. This team needed defense. Not really, but that's what they got. Tristan Powell says, I hope Boyum turns into a top 5 guy for you guys and Quinn brings a cup to Minnie. Okay. If Minnesota makes the playoffs this year, I think I can speak for maybe all Canucks fans. I hope. I will be cheering so hard for Quinn Hughes. I will go buy. If Minnesota is truly fighting for a Stanley Cup, I will go buy one of those Subway reverse retro Minnesota jerseys with a Hughes 43 on the back. And I will go to where the parade would be. It's St. Paul. I don't know where they play. It's not even the XL Energy Center anymore, is it? But no, I'm 100% rooting for Minnesota now. Because I am a Quinn Hughes fan. I am number 1 Canucks fan, number 2 Quinn Hughes fan, and the Canucks aren't doing anything this year. But yeah, if Boyum's a top 5 guy and Hughes gets a cup, I'm a happy man. What else we got here? Bedard got injured. That sucks. Get your paper sixes down 37. Asks Alvin or Benning. It's look, brother. It's not close. It's Alvin by a mile. And I don't like that we lost Quinn Hughes, but they were going to lose him anyways. Benning was terrible. Don't Stockholm syndrome yourself into thinking Benning was any good. Oh man. TW says if Sherwood got the same thing Tanner Jeannot did a couple years ago, that would be insane. God, I can't believe that Tanner Jeannot got that much. He's so... never mind. All right, we're going to take a couple more because we'll be right around the hour mark. Demko for captain. So it would be nice to have your captain play more than 30 games. RMD says, does he want to resign in Minnesota? Can the Wild offer him more than other teams? They can definitely offer him as much money as they want to. Does he want to sign in Minnesota? This is a tough one because we haven't heard anything about this yet. And this trade's only 6-7 hours old. We don't know if Minnesota got to talk to Quinn Hughes, and I kind of doubt it because he still had a year and a half left on his contract. So I don't think there would have been any input hey, do you want to talk about whether or not you'd be wanting to extend, et cetera, if you got traded to this team. I don't think they're close enough to that yet. Here's what I'll say. If Minnesota is good, if they make it to the second round this year and maybe second or third round next year, I think he'll probably want to stay because you build those connections. Unless unless the Devils are right on the cusp of winning a cup, and he says, "Yep, I'm going to go there instead." But we'll see. We will see what that looks like. Kevin says, "Are you planning to continue watching the Canucks live home games?" No. Look, I've been to 3 games this year. I've been lucky enough to go to 3 games this year. One of them was because I won a bet against a friend. Did not pay to go to that game. The second one, I was given tickets to. I did not pay to go to that game. The third one, I was not planning to go. I ended up downtown because it would be easier for me to get to where I needed to go from downtown. And I was at dinner with friends who were going to the game. And I said, sure, I'll spend $30 on a ticket. So I have spent in total $30 US. So, okay, call it 40 on going to Canucks games this year, if you don't include the beer cost and the triple O's cost, which is significant. But no, I don't live in Vancouver. So it's just not worth the trek for me when this team is not good. If we're talking playoffs, I'll make a trek down to Seattle to go to playoff games for the Seahawks or for the Mariners. I would do the same for the Canucks by far. And I did that in 2024. I guess that would have been. But no, I will not be giving my money to this organization if I can avoid it, or unless, again, I'm going for free with friends. Grand Casino Arena instead of the XL Energy Center. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. CP2TV says, yuck, Minnesota, you should resign as a Canucks fan if you do that. Look, I can cheer for whoever I want, for one. And two, the Wild, look, I didn't like the Wild in like 2003 when Manny Fernandez was a monster against us. But Minnesota has done nothing to offend me in 20 years. They are the definition of middle of the pack. And I'm cheering for a player, not a team. Wild fan here is Quinn Hughes, known to be good in the room. I mean, he was the captain, and yeah, he's fine. He's not super vocal. I mean, he was the captain of a bad team. Maybe that should concern you. But no, you shouldn't be worried too much about that. Kempner says, do you know what the Marco Rossi injury is? I do not, but AMC says he was going to return to the lineup before tonight. So that should be fine if he's going to be healthy for next game. Taylor says, most Cat has ever had. I don't think that's true. I think we've had more than 330 once or twice. But hey, 330 people in here. Appreciate that. Like I said, if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe. Also, YouTube has this new feature where they have like a shorts thing as well. So I'm also on YouTube Shorts live somehow. And if you're watching me there, hello. I don't know why I'm holding tweezers. But yeah, hit subscribe. Eddie Longo says it was Dwayne Roloson who beat us in 2003. I remember a picture. It was on the front of a Hockey News magazine. Hold on. I want to see if I can find it because it's got to be one of his most iconic photos. Manny Fernandez, Hockey News. There's no way I find this, right? Oh, God. All the pictures of him are in Boston jerseys. Maybe I was wrong. Either way, I just have... He's the one that rings the bell in my mind. Either way, doesn't matter. Do not matter. Eddie says, do you sense Albion may trade the mini first rounder? They did it with the Horvat and Miller trade. That was a different situation, man. That was a team that looked like they could do something. That is not where they're at now. I think I have glitter from the gift I got for my work party in my face. This is what I said, Justin. This is what I said at the top of the show when I was talking about coping. Hughes planned this with. Imagine if Hughes planned this with management because it's a 2C and a first round pick, of course. Don't forget about that. Have him played out. Sign back with Vancouver for cheap. That's not going to happen, man. But that would be sick. Peter says, I get Adam Foote just got hired, but at this point, they should just fire him. At this point, it doesn't matter. No, he's a tank commander, man. He's leading us to the promised land of losing the draft lottery and getting 4th overall. But yeah, no, I think I don't think they're in a rush to get rid of Adam Foote because it's kind of working. All right. Well, we're at the hour mark, and everyone's just kind of sad in the chat. Okay, someone else remembered Manny Fernandez. Thank you, Tyler. I appreciate that. All right. Well, that's I think that's where I'm going to wrap up. Thank you to the 300 plus of you. 1,300 different people joined this tonight, by the way. That's impressive. If you enjoyed me rambling for an hour, I do this every Monday with my co-host Clay. So feel free to hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, hit the like button while you're here. What's the likes at? Where are we at? It doesn't tell me. YouTube is terrible. It's impossible to know unless I open another page. I found the link. Hold on. How many people have liked this? 47. Come on, guys. Hit the like button. Get those numbers up. If you missed any part and want to rewind and be sad, you can do that here on YouTube. I'll also post this on every podcast platform. Search Canucks After Dark. It'll be up there in 15 minutes or so. I don't think we're doing a show this Monday. This is going to sort of make up for it. So like I said, make sure you're subscribed. And I'm sure the rest of the shows for the year are going to be really fun while this team isn't very good. So anyways, hope you enjoyed. Have a good night. Normally this is where I say, Clay, any parting words? He is not here. So I will ring the gong in his honor. I appreciate you all coming. Have a good night. Enjoy your weekend. Have a good holiday if you don't join another stream, which I'm sure the majority of you won't because it's a very high number. And we will see you next time.